Well, hello everybody, and welcome to Solutions with Aquarius Rising. Oh, with Shanti again. I keep saying with Aquarius Rising, but with Shanti. I saw you just a little while ago with Catherine, so welcome back, everybody. Good to see you again. And of course, we're here with beautiful Brice. And we are continuing with this god awful JODI HILDEBRANDT and Ruby Franke story. I must say,
No.
sure, it's
I
quite something, isn't it?
well, I was pulling up all of this stuff because, speaking of solutions, what I think we really want to do is really talk about her form of therapy and how she manipulated it, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't want people to be afraid of because the form of therapy that she used is not uncommon, but she inverted it. And so I think this is so important. I mean, it was important to tell the story of who these women were and what they did, but I think moving forward, because we know we're going through a lot as a collective right now, and so people need resources to ground themselves and to find that healing. And if we throw the baby out with the bathwater, we're never going to heal. And so I think this is a super
Exactly.
important show.
I think it's so important, and I love that we actually bringing up these topics because, there really is too much of this going on. As we know what's happening, and especially in our community or people, I want to call it the truther community, but I'm not part of that community. There's just so much nonsense going on there,
Yeah.
lies, deception, all sorts of gaslighting going on, all of that. So we have to really be so aware of what's going on at all times. We've got to be aware. We've got to be discerning. We have to know who we're dealing with. And people can be so deceptive. But when we've done our shadow work or doing our shadow work, I don't think the shadow work for the foreseeable future ends. I mean, there's always roadblocks and blind spots and things that we encounter. But when we are in that place of trusting and alignment, we will know exactly what we're dealing with. And that's the whole thing.
That's such a good point. My friend Jessica, we were just speaking about Jessica, the cryptid huntress. She calls it the disclosure community, and I actually like that term a lot better. The disclosure, and it's interesting as you were saying that, Shanti. And my opinion is that 95% of the people who are truthers are full of shit, right? Like 95% of them are, and when we look at like what JODI HILDEBRANDT and I've experienced this, and this is why I call the truther community a cult. It's a cult just like the normie cult, because these YouTubers will sit here, and we know most of them, they don't have connections. They don't have the Ashanti does. She has whistleblowers, but some of these other people, they're just pulling stuff out of their rear end. And if you question it, then and that's kind of what JODI HILDEBRANDT did, right? She had truth and distortion, which is part of spirituality, is learning to see the truth through the illusion, through the distortion. However, in a proper spiritual practice, you're given some insight into like what Maya is. That's the Sanskrit word for illusion. Prakriti, Purusha, the Shiva, the Shakti. But there's no authority that's telling you what the truth really is and what the illusion really is, because it's up to you to figure that out. It's up to you to go through the ego death, and for you to start to go through, that was one thing right when 2020 happened that we saw. I know we've spoken about this, Shanti, in the yoga world. My boyfriend made a really good point. That was a really good time to see which yoga people had actually been doing their practice. Because if you had actually been doing your practice and seeing your own truth through your own illusion, then you would have very easily seen the truth through the illusion being fed to us on the external. And so I'm looking at you, Kino, because obviously you, Kino, have not been doing your practice, because you fell hook, line, and sinker for the very
I was so horrified by that, I have to tell you. I don't know. After that, I was like, Kino. I liked Kino before then.
Me too.
I couldn't actually believe that she was doing that. I mean, and it sounds judgmental, I know. But I was like, what?
It's discernment.
And she was like,
It's discernment. And I know Kino. I've met Kino many times in India. We've been practicing. I've had spent a lot of time with Kino just off the mat, just, you know, and I liked her too. But after that happened, you know, she might be practicing 5th series, but I realized for me, like, I can't, there's nothing I can learn from people like her. I can't,
Yeah.
there's nothing I can learn from her because she did not, obviously did not see, if she couldn't see the obvious illusion in 2020, then that means she's never really worked on herself.
It's the
She's only,
delusion that took over.
yeah. And so, and there was a huge divide. We saw in the Ashtanga world, we saw the people like us. There was a group of people like us that were like, no, I have to shout out. There was a teacher in Toronto, and I don't know, there's a lot of authorized Ashtanga teachers in Toronto, but every morning he would get up and open up his Mysore shala because we practiced super early in the morning. He would get arrested. He would go home, and the next morning he would do it again. So whoever that authorized teacher was in Toronto that was doing that, my hat is off to you. I have so much respect for you, and thank you for non-violently representing the true practice of yoga, for standing
Yeah,
up for
exactly.
authority, even, you know. So anyway, but yeah, when we look at like, and we see that, like, you know, in my experience now being on this platform for 4 years, please ask, can you hear? So my mic is up as high as it can. So I don't know if, can y'all hear me?
Yeah, I hear you well. I hear you well. But she's saying mine is much louder than yours. So let me go into settings.
Yeah, mine, it sounds like it normally does for me. So,
Well, mine's an automatic adjust mic volume. Okay, well now put my mic volume lower. Can you hear me?
yeah,
Can
I
you
can
guys
hear
still
you.
hear me?
It could be SRS 4859. It could be your mic system. It could be like you have a mic system that might be a little bit out, that might be picking up somebody's voices higher than the
No,
other.
I just adjusted mine, made mine more quiet so that, but it's
Yeah.
actually on automatic mic settings. So the system automatically adjusts it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, anyway,
Okay.
let us know, guys, if it gets worse or anything. But yeah, it's when we're looking, I guess that's a good place to start, though, isn't it, Shanti? The truth versus the distortion, which is the basis of JODI Hildebrandt's
Yeah,
therapy.
exactly. Because you see, it's the whole, the head versus the heart. Okay, hang on. Yes, can hear you, but with headsets and earbuds, it's very different between the two. So it's extremely loud and hard on the ear.
Okay, that's your headset then.
Yeah, that would be,
Yeah.
that would be the headset, because I've not turned mine down. And it's usually, as I said, it's usually on automatic, you know, the computer. I hear you fine. In fact, I hear you pretty clearly. So maybe check your headset and your mic volume, etc. It's probably something that's happening there.
SRS 4859. If you've got your headset plugged into the computer, if you don't turn it in all the way, I know because I do this all the time when I'm out. If it's plugged in, if it's not plugged in, check your batteries. But if it's plugged in, if you don't put it in all the way, one ear is going to be louder than the other, right? It's like when you adjust, and you might need to adjust the bass sounding on your actual headset. So it sounds like that's a headset problem, not a microphone problem for you.
Yeah.
So just check your setup with if it's wireless headset, check your batteries and check the bass of your sound. So
Okay.
yeah, but SRS, it's your headset, because it's not coming from our if you're hearing one, if you're hearing one louder in one ear than the other, that's your headset. So just check your headset. But anyway, so I think I just pulled up. Do you mind if I read this about, kind of just kick us off with JODI Hildebrandt, Shanti?
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
So I found this on jodihildebrandt.com, which seems to be a website, because I tried to find the Connections website and it seems like they've taken it down.
Yeah, they have taken it down. I looked too.
So I pulled up, somebody has opened up a website called jodihildebrandt.com, and it doesn't seem like it's JODI. It seems like somebody has opened this up. They have all of her review up, which we can read through some of them. But let me just read you what they wrote. Whoever created this website did a great job. JODI HILDEBRANDT is an author, life coach, and the founder and creator of the Connections classroom based in Orem, Utah. The curriculum is strongly based on her 5 years of experience working in Circuit Lodge, I think it's how it's said, which is a drug rehabilitation center that focuses on treating addiction, which we can talk about her obsession with addiction in a minute. After leading this lodge, JODI designed and created the Connections 101 course, which is based for teachings throughout the various counseling programs that are offered through her Connections classrooms. And below it says, read reviews about Connection Classroom, as well as the information regarding her licensing being on probation by the Utah Clinical Mental Health Counselor Licensing Board. So that her license going on probation happened before the child abuse allegations. Or I guess they're not allegations anymore because they pled guilty. So her crimes. The core teachings of Connection is that a person is to achieve true connection with another human being. They must not be in distortion, and these are in quotation marks. Distortion is a broad term defined by JODI. By taking her course, people learn that they are in distortion by the following: being addicted to a spouse, work, shopping, electric games, sleep, social media, driving, receiving compliments, exercise, eating, drugs or alcohol, sex, pornography, hobbies, entertainment. The things you can become addicted to are endless. Living in shame and denial, knowing you are not enough, being codependent in your relationships, living in lust, so if you are sexually attracted to your spouse, according to JODI HILDEBRANDT, you are living in distortion. Which, I'm sorry, I thought the point was you were supposed to be sexually attracted to your spouse. I thought that was kind of the sacred bond that you have with the person that you choose to spend your life with. That's why they're your partner. They're not just your partner in paying the bills and vacuuming.
She has an obsession with sex, though. That's the thing.
She does.
She definitely, there's something in her with sex, and maybe, I don't know, her partner, or if she's ever had one, was not sexually attracted to her, so she has an issue.
She's a lesbian. I actually think she's a lesbian, and she's
yes.
a woman, so yeah. And controlling and manipulating others, which is what she does. JODI asserts that everyone is in distortion and all experience the above, but she can help you to overcome distortion and live in truth with a capital T. JODI teaches that 3 core principles must be developed in order to truly connect with anyone and avoid distortion. If you or others do not practice these principles, they are considered in distortion. Boundaries need to be set to distance yourself from these individuals. So isolation. So she's encouraged you to isolate, which is a sign of a cult. So you are not drawn into distortion with them. These core principles of connections are being impeccable honesty, rigorous personal responsibility, and humility. She equates these principles of being impeccably honest, rigorously responsible, and humility to absolute truth when connecting with others, comparing them to natural phenomena such as gravity. Her stated mission is to spread these teachings to the world so everyone can have healthy, fulfilling, and connecting relationship. She actively encourages you to refer a family member to join her program so they too can experience true connection. If they do not learn these new truths from her, they will never truly be able to connect with others. These principles are reinforced each week by requiring class members to call other students when they feel they are in distortion. The men call the men, the women call the women. Each week in class, students ask to be publicly accountable for the number of phone calls they made that week. Even though shame is discussed at length in this course, this is not considered public shaming. See the manipulation there? Anyway, there's even more, but I kind of want to pause on that for a minute to kind of talk about the manipulation here. Is there anything I'm sorry, let me get off that page. Is there anything you want to say about that first, Shanti?
Well, I mean, it all sounds very delightful, doesn't it? It sounds incredibly slick. The words are sounding delightful because everything she's saying there, in fact, is very appealing, right? And makes a lot of sense. But then, as you say, so that would be the truth, because those words would be, on the surface, they would be truthful. But then, of course, there's the distortion and the manipulation as to how are they applied and how are they, therefore, how does she teach them, mentor them, whatever it is she does, from what we're seeing. And, for me, just to look at what you're talking about there in terms of her saying that if you're sexually attracted to your partner, you're living in lust. That's exactly what you say. When you're in a marriage, that's what you do. How many marriages fall apart? I know, I've been a healer for many years. That has been one of the main issues, that marriages or relationships break down because sexually they've grown apart, or the one is not interested and the other one ends up having an affair because of that, or blah, 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 whatever the case might be, right? So it really is ridiculous because you have to be, in have a state of healthy lust for your significant other. You have to want to have that because there's two reasons biblically, if you want to call it that, and I'm talking about the true biblical version, not the corrupted one, that we have sex. It's to procreate, of course, and to form emotional bonds, and to continue to have emotional bonds in our relationship. It's an expression of human affection. It's the next step, it's that beautiful expression. And you know what, quite frankly, God gave us our partners and our bodies so that we can enjoy each other. Why would we have sexual pleasure, or why would we have the ability to have sexual pleasure if we're not allowed to use it? Yes, again, are we abusing it? There's a big difference between the abuse thereof and the use thereof. So that's, of course, what we've got to look at here. That's insane.
Hi, Jessica, the cryptid huntress. She just signed in the chat. So we were just chatting about you, Jessica. So yes, but that actually like gut punched me because I know that when people are in a long-term relationship, they call it the 7-year itch, that you get really comfortable with each other. And I know for me, like, I'm really comfortable with my partner, like super. Listen, y'all. Don't ever travel to India with your partner unless you are comfortable in that relationship, because
don't travel anywhere.
the bathrooms in India have marble floors that echo. So if you get belly, like you're gonna have to be really comfortable with your partner. But I will even say, like, I've been with my boyfriend for a long time, and so we're very comfortable with each other. We've seen each other at our worst, right? And so I make it a point. Like, my favorite thing to sleep in at night are granny panties and a t-shirt. We've talked about it. But I have now gone and like bought all new, like, comfortable panties that look a little cleaner, and like, when they're always clean, but just look nicer, and like nice pajamas, because he deserves that, right? He deserves to have, and I remember, I always try to like look nice when he comes home, just because I want, that as a partner, he always looks nice for me. Like, I want, Jessica Shanti knows my boyfriend, but Jessica also met him this weekend. So, so I think he wants to join her Bigfoot research team. So, but
cool.
yeah. So I think when I saw that, just, I'm 41 now. So I'm at that stage in my life where I've seen friends get married, have babies, get divorced. I've seen it now. And I think that if you are in a long-term marriage and you're going for counseling, but you're still sexually attracted to each other, I would think that would be a pretty good sign that you're going to pull through. Not a bad sign, especially if you only have eyes for each other. Like, especially if it's staying within the marriage or in the relationship, in the the monogamous bond. If that's how you he's an honorary member, I'll tell him that. So I definitely, that really kind of struck me as odd. But did you notice in this, guys? So I want to go back to the list of the distortions that she meant: being addicted to your spouse, work, shopping, electronic games, sleep, social media, driving, receiving compliments, exercise, eating, drugs, or alcohol. These are all things in the yoga world we would call like attachments, right?
Yeah.
However, And I understand, like, you could be codependent with your spouse. I get that. Like, that's not healthy. You do need to be able to do things on your own. I get that, but here's the thing. Again, when you're coming from like the yoga world and you're looking at this where this comes from in a healthy, I know there are yoga cults out there, there are cults everywhere, but in a healthy teaching, the teacher's not ever going to tell you. They're going to kind of guide you around your blind spots and kind of point, but it's going to be up to you to recognize
Exactly.
where maybe I'm a little bit too codependent on my spouse, or maybe I'm shopping too much, or maybe I'm actually went over a boundary and I'm using exercise, what I traditionally used it as a way to spiritually open myself and heal myself. Now I've become dependent on it, or food, or whatever it is, but the way that it seems Jodi has set this up is that everything in your life is now a distortion except for her and what she says.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
part of you being human in this world of prakriti, of nature, with your soul, is learning how to live in the world where we love our spouse, where we enjoy things like shopping or enjoy food, learning how to live in that, but also notice when we're coming to dependent without completely. Does that make sense? Like, to need to exercise
Yeah,
is
totally.
distortion, right? Like,
Anything, I mean, too much of a good thing is bad when
mhm,
it comes to anything:
yeah,
eating, sleeping, dieting, uh, drinking too much water. I mean, I know people who were drinking 8 liters of water a day and couldn't understand why there was not a nutrient left in their body, right?
right.
And thought they were doing this fantastic thing. Um, Anything like that, when you go, and that's why it's always good to speak to somebody who's a well balanced, let's say nutritionist, who will tell you on average for your body type how much water should you be drinking, how much sugar should you be having. I mean, sugar is not a bad thing unless you're eating all this what do you call it, the ones you get the sugar, but like fruit sugars and stuff,
Yeah.
everything. What's the word I'm looking for, man? Sugars in the
The
packet and stuff. The
Oh, this, like, the Splendas,
Yeah,
what's
but
it
there's
called?
a word for it. I'm just like, it's just like
Aspartame, or no, what's it called? Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
anything, any of those things that you're having, you really should be eating fresh.
Yeah.
But there's also, your body is very forgiving and it's very intelligent. So it's going to show you when you are imbalanced and when you're having too much. I mean, if you are eating too much, you're going to pick up weight,
Mhm.
right? And there's a healthy amount of weight you can carry. But then the question is, if you're just picking up more and more and more weight, either you're eating too much, there's a major issue, or you have a thyroid problem or something. That
Parasite,
would
yeah.
be a good enough reason for you to then say, hang on, something is not right here. I'm not eating, I'm exercising, and still something's out of balance. Then you check up on yourself. That's the whole thing is, everything in life should be a guideline,
Yeah.
right? It's a guideline. It's not one size fits all. We all have a unique fingerprint for a reason.
Mhm.
We are unique because everyone requires something slightly different to the other person. And that's what we need to take notice of, is that it's not I mean, this where she says, yeah, rigorous personal responsibility. That rigorous word for me is a swear word, because anything rigorous is not good. It
Yeah.
sounds like you've gained the military and you've now got to go and do whatever those guys do. And that's rigorous training, which we don't need in this environment. Yes, you need to have discipline. Yes, you need to be responsible, right? But you also got to realize what you take responsibility for, what's your responsibility, and what's not your responsibility. You see, that's also, it's about letting go and not controlling, because that word rigorous to me sounds like it's a controlling thing. That's what it feels like to me. Anything rigorous, no. So
Yeah.
there are little red flags here for me, which primarily, if I'd been reading this website, I would have thought 80% of it sounds fantastic. I would love to spend time talking to this person, and they talk about coming from a place of love and all of this, but oh my God, no, there was
Well,
not much love.
I mean, we've shown pictures of Jodi Hildebrandt before, and let's talk about the overeating thing. And I don't mean
Yeah.
to sound mean, but she claims to have she's got it figured out. She knows what the truth is, and she's saying people are addicted to food. She's overweight.
Yeah, she was a little bit chubby, and no judgment against
No.
anyone.
But
Right?
it's just like,
Please.
you can't claim to have all the answers and say when you yourself are showing that you still, and that's the thing about being human, as you said, like that's the thing. We're never, in no point are you going to get it perfectly right. You're always going to be working with these attachments and working on it's going to be a continual, not at one point. Very few people are actually enlightened. Like very few people actually are, enlightened with a capital E, right? Are samadhi with a capital S. We might have these, like, as the Yoga Sutras say, these prativa moments, these flashes of illumination where we go, and we see it clearly for a second, and then we have to work to get back to that. But that's the whole point of being in this tango in the human body, is to have that friction, and the fact that she's sitting here, and it's interesting, like I look at her and I think, okay, you were married, you got divorced. She has 2 kids, one of whom doesn't speak to her anymore. You're overweight. You literally have no friends. It's all your clients or your cult members. So from the outside looking in, I'm looking at Jodi Hildebrandt saying, if anybody's in distortion, it's you, Jodi.
Absolutely.
And that's important. My therapist told me that once. Like, it's important to observe people in their, that are in your life, like
what they attract.
Yeah.
What they attract into their lives.
Do they have, like by in your 40s, you might have 1 or 2 really close friends that you've had for a long time. Have you been able to maintain, has this person been able to maintain long-term friendships or relationships? Like, there are signs of somebody's stability, and it's just, the fact that she is the giver of truth and nobody else is the biggest red. And I'm going to tell you guys, if you ever walk into a yoga class or any type of Tai Chi class, whatever it is, a therapy, and the provider pretends like they have all the answers, then that's just a huge red flag. We have the template, we have the roadmap of these ancient practices, but we ourselves are still students. The difference between a teacher and a student is a teacher's just done it for a lot longer, right? So we can kind of show you a little bit ahead and say, have fun on your own journey. You can bring a horse to water, but you can't make him drink, right? Like you have to do the work. No one else can do it but you. And I know what Jodi would do. And I honestly, this is just my speculation, guys. I think Jodi Hildebrandt is a lesbian. That's my opinion. Which to me, I don't care. You can be whatever you want to be. But I think because she is so immersed in the Mormon church, the LDS church, which are hugely homophobic.
Yeah.
She has
and racist. Total racist.
Very racist. They use the term, I think in the Book of Mormon, it's white and delightsome. So very racist, very homophobic, very patriarchal, like in the sense that women are, look at the polygamy, which is funny, in the missing books of the Bible, that's the one relationship Yahshua badmouths is polygamy. And that's in the Mormon and the mainstream church, they're going to be polygamous in heaven, right? So that doesn't speak highly for God's view of women that God created. And I forgot who it was that said this. Like, if you look at the biblical story of Adam and Eve, God messed up with Adam, so he had to make Eve. So it's almost like women are actually more favored by God, because God was like, ain't a woman.
Let's try again.
What's so I just thought that was funny. But in my opinion, we're different. When men and women are definitely different, have different energies, but we're also equal, and that, as far as our value. And so I think that Jodi, in my opinion, again, I don't know this woman, I don't know her at all. She doesn't know me, but from what I've seen, it appears that she is a lesbian. She's she's suppressed her own sexual urges and lust. And she's also, I believe, a psychopath and a narcissist. So that's a gnarly combination.
Yeah,
Because
all you have to do is see her behavior
Mhm.
and how she's treated kids and innocent, helpless children.
It's
Um,
disgusting.
who- yeah, and manipulating others to do the same. I mean, that's really bad.
I she what she'll do, guys, you'll see this countless times, is a husband and wife will come to her recommended by their bishop for like couples counseling. And she uses, and this is the thing about narcissists, they use the same playbook for everything. She will tell the husband or the wife or both of them that the husband is a sex addict. Now, there are actual people who are addicted to sex, but from every case I've read, it does not appear that way.
Mm.
Have you? She'll ask if they've looked at adult sites, and they'll be like, maybe once. Oh, then you're an addict. So then she'll separate.
Porn addict.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she'll convince the woman that she's in an abusive marriage when she's not, but she'll separate the husband from the wife,
Yeah.
and then she destroys, like she is notorious for destroying marriages, destroying them.
Well, if you're listening to Jessie Hildebrand, her niece, who was talking, I mean, she was also, I think she's now, I do believe, 21 or so, but she was talking when she was much younger. She was also um, enslaved, if you will, by JODI. And this poor child was accused of being addicted to masturbation. She had no idea even what masturbation was. She was accused of being addicted to sex. She'd never even had sex before, and she was accused of all these
She
things.
was
So yeah, this
accused of
child is,
having an abortion, and she'd never done, like, she'd never even had, she was like 14, 15 years old, you know? Um, yeah, that with the little boy that escaped.
yeah,
That was what was horrifying. When they were arrested, they said, and he was 12 years old, that he had been addicted to adult websites since he was 3.
exactly.
This is not, he's 12.
What the hell, man? What?
Well, first of all, if you're 3-year-olds looking at adult websites, that's not, most 3-year-olds have to be watched pretty much nonstop, right? Because they're still sticking their fingers into outlets and sockets. And I don't know, are 3-year-olds potty trained by that point? I don't know at what point you potty train.
Some of them not. Some of them are. Some of them are still sleeping with diapers on at night at that age.
Yeah. So this is a
So,
baby.
I mean,
3-year-olds, in my opinion, are still babies.
yeah,
So if you're 3-year-olds looking at adult websites, it's because you've showed it to him,
exactly.
right?
And still probably doesn't even know really what's going on.
No.
But, for me, I honestly and truly believe that this woman was and again, this sounds like a judgment, but it's my opinion, gauging from what we're seeing here. She has had some sort of violation happen to her as a child. She clearly has major issues with men, because every marriage that was brought to her, well, the ones that we saw anyway, the guys, she would separate, she'd break up the marriage, accusing the guys of being porn addicts and sex addicts, right? So she's split up several. I don't want to say she's broken up every single relationship. I don't know that, but a lot of people who were speaking out were saying that she has broken up their marriage, accusing them of stuff they have not done. Um, the fact that she's so obsessed with sex and addiction to sex is telling me, and the fact that she's clearly gay, in my opinion, as well, um, is telling me that she has had major issues, probably as a kid. And of course, the big thing here is she's so endorsed by the Mormon Church. I believe that she's controlled by the church
Yeah.
and was controlled by the church. Again, I wanna recommend you guys go and watch my interviews. I did 2 or 3 interviews with a lady called Asia Rain, maybe about just over a year ago now. And Asia Rain was trafficked by the Mormon Church. I mean, in
Yeah.
a major way. She
The
will.
church
She
gave,
names names.
well, the church
She,
gave her power. The church gave
Yeah,
Jodi that power, didn't they?
exactly. And the Mormon Church, as I've said before, is one of the 5 pillars of the Illuminati. So we have to know that it's really, their intentions are never good. They are pretty much governed by the satanic cult. So let's look at where this has led. The question is, did the church know what was going on? Possibly not. Possibly not. I'm wondering whether people would have complained to the church, though, right? I haven't actually seen anything like that, that people who'd been seeing her for this counseling were actually complaining to the church. But actually, I remember listening to one of the interviews, and I think it was still with Jessie, her niece, who was saying, she was so fully into the church, and the church was endorsing her, that they were not actually listening.
Do you know, I just looked up. So this website, which is JODIHILDEBRANDT.com, they have a section for LDS, for the Latter-day Saints, and I just clicked on it. So it basically says, is Jodi Hildebrandt, LDS, Latter-day Saints, a Mormon? The short answer is yes. Jodi Hildebrandt is LDS, or a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, although her teachings are not in line with the LDS Church. She heavily mixes in the doctrine of the LDS Church, so Mormon people will trust more of what she is selling. As people progress from her basic classes to more advanced group classes, LDS doctrine is mixed even more heavily with her teachings. Jodi regularly teaches that local church leadership, such as bishops and stake presidents, are in distortion, and they need to learn what she is teaching in order to effectively live in truth. So again, here she's the holder of the truth.
Grooming. She's such a groomer. That's serious grooming.
She also implies that her methods and classes are on par with what the president of the church or the prophet teaches. She does so in a lighthearted way, but the effect is leading people to distrust church leadership and reinforces her role as an oracle, which is how people have described her. Now, I want to point this out too, because this is a problem that is with all churches and all religions. If we look at the law of one, right? The law of one is very clear that any type of elitism, any type of pecking order is of the dark side. So if you're calling someone a prophet, if you're regarding somebody else as being more spiritually superior to you, that is satanic. Are there people that have certain gifts that they are? Yes. And you can go and ask those people to help you, understanding that you are equal to that person in value. Does that make sense? Like you can go, like Shanti has special gifts, Jessica has special gifts, but neither Shanti nor Jessica treat anybody else like they're beneath them, right? So the way Jodi is selling this is that Jodi is elite, and she knows even more than your bishops or your presidents. And the Mormon Church, I mean, all churches do this, but the Mormon Church is very outwardly about their bishops and their stake presidents and their prophet. And so they have a pecking order, a very, very defined pecking order. And so Jodi is putting herself at the top of this pecking order. Now, we know that she markets specifically to Mormons, which in itself is, from what I understand, is a violation in the American whatever the organization is that licensed therapists, right? A therapist in America specifically, it might be the same across the world, are not allowed to disclose to their patients what religion they are. They're supposed to keep themselves out of it. So if a Jewish person comes to you, or a Christian comes to you, or a Hindu comes from you, as a therapist, you help the person through their own belief system. So the fact that she's already inserted Mormonism into her therapy, and she's an actual licensed therapist, so a secular therapist, is already a problem. Now, think about it this way, guys. Since the Mormon Church is established in its pecking order, it's established this, people who are raised LDS are already half of the grooming's already been done for them, right? They're already groomed to believe their bishop knows what's best. that their prophet knows what's best. So they're easy prey. Now, if someone like Shanti or me went to JODI HILDEBRANT, she'd have a hell of a time, wouldn't she? She would hate us as patients, wouldn't she, Shanti?
She would love us. She would love us. I mean, so much that she'd kick our asses out of there. That's for sure.
Because I'd be like, I don't got no bishop. What are you talking about? I don't believe. I think we're all prophets. I think we're all, So, she already had the easy by inserting herself into this already dogmatic approach. So Jodi does not teach love, forgiveness, long suffering, or patience. Instead, she teaches that unless everyone comes to her classes to learn how to have correct relationships, they are in distortion, they are addicted, codependent, and lost. She proclaims her teachings are in truth with a capital T. Jodi describes them as equivalent to gravity, absolute and irrevocable. I don't think I've ever referred to my teachings as absolute, ever.
No.
No.
Nothing is absolute.
Nothing is.
Nothing
In fact,
is
one of my favorite quotes is that all the trees in the forest are different, but they're all reaching towards the same light. There are multiple paths to the same destination, right? And then it goes that she alone is able to help people find enlightenment and connection. She teaches her students to put up boundaries with their friends and family, which effectively cuts everyone out of their lives and will not listen and learn her doctrine. So I want to kind of talk about that too, because that's a manipulation, right? Boundaries are essential for a healthy relationship, like boundaries, right? Like when I first started dating my boyfriend, we sat down. It was his idea. We had a conversation. What are hard boundaries and what are soft boundaries? Soft boundaries are things you don't like, but you'll compromise on. Hard boundaries are absolute hard boundaries. And for both of us, our hard boundaries were cheating. We both expected monogamy. Our hard, obviously, abuse. Like those were hard boundaries. But then you also have soft boundaries that you can wiggle with. So my boyfriend had a conversation about that. Most people with empathy and compassion know their boundaries. Like I know that I'm not going to come knock on your door at 2:00 in the morning to party. The only time I'm going to knock on your door at 2:00 in the morning is if I'm in an emergency situation. Like most of us have boundaries that we will, cultural boundaries. But what she's calling boundaries aren't boundaries. They're her perception of reality. And if it would, we see this division, like if you don't believe exactly what I believe, then you can't be in my life. That's not a boundary. That's like that.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, Jessica. So I don't know if you have anything to say on that, Shanti, like how that idea of boundaries is being manipulated.
I think boundaries are something, what I always say to people as well, boundaries is not necessarily putting a wall down or a barrier down or slamming a door shut or what have you. Boundaries is something, it's like, imagine, as Rumi says, there's a sun within each person. We all, that your spirit, your soul. As you grow in consciousness, so it like radiates out of you like the sun, right? So you have the rays of the sun, which are automatic boundaries. It enables you to see ahead of you, it lights your way for you, it lights your path, it gets you to see, no, I don't want to go there. Yes, I do want to go there. No, that doesn't work for me. Yes, that works for me. Okay. And absolutely. So you would automatically know as you grow in confidence, you automatically start putting down your boundaries. And yes, as you say, there are certain things that are, I call it a deal breaker.
Yeah.
And a deal breaker, let's say, would be infidelity or abuse of any kind, or addictions of drugs or alcohol or something like that. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So yes, there would certainly be deal breakers, and there are other things that, but I always think everything is an opportunity for growth, right? Yeah. So to sit down and communicate about stuff is obviously the first prize. That for me is what that's about, and not just assumes the worst about the other person and then break the agreement or the contract you have with that person because this is the way it is for me, and that's what it is. What she's saying is you have to have those boundaries. So what? The child But the thing is, and I think also it has to be age appropriate. Now, because obviously a lot of their work was done with families and kids. So how do you apply the same rules to a 3-year-old and to a 15-year-old? You can't. It's got to be age appropriate.
Yeah.
And that's where, to me, it didn't seem, I mean, what she was doing to 15-year-olds was disgusting.
Yeah.
And so you can imagine doing that to a 3-year-old, running into a cactus,
That's not
having to
even
do
for an
push-ups,
adult. Well,
having to do push-ups because you left your socks in the garden. I mean, just atrocious things. So you have got to then be flexible as a parent. You've got to be able to understand. You've got to come from a place of love. You cannot do any of this type of work unless you're coming from a place of genuine love and not just up here, well, we've got to do this like this, boom, boom, boom. And that's what she was doing, although she was lying about it because she was talking about it as if it was beautiful and loving. Meanwhile, all the actions were completely inverted to what she was actually saying.
this is what gets me too, because like most people who study, like my mother, her bachelor's is in early childhood development, so she can tell you like at what point different things develop in a child's mind. And like that's why you don't teach a kindergartner calculus, right? Like you have to grow into the depth of your understanding. And I feel like that in itself, clinical people like Jodi or a teacher should know more clinically, like this age, where things are going to happen. But I feel like that's just common sense too. Like a 5-year-old is not going to have the wherewithal of a 16-year-old, right?
Exactly.
And so therefore, discipline has to be, as you're saying, age appropriate. They say for like kids to have time out. Like if a kid has a temper tantrum and like smacks their sibling, I've heard people say if the kid is 5, then you make them sit on the stairs for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's enough for them. That 5-minute,
Yeah,
however old they are.
and their time out, and they, have their time out for whatever. You have a minute for every year.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, she's having these kids go and run into cactus bushes and stand outside on the concrete in 110 degrees weather where they're that really upset me when I read that about the skin on their feet. It's been so burnt that it's not, you think about third-degree burns on a face, now that on the bottom of your feet. Their feet are basically what it reads like are deformed now because of all the burns that they got on their foot. That's not okay for an adult.
Torture,
Torture.
She was torturing the kids. I mean, when you think about putting kids in handcuffs, I mean, that is torture. When you
Locking
think
in the
about,
rooms.
yeah. And with this tape that was around their ankles and wrists, I mean, that is absolute abuse. That's torture.
Well, the
I mean,
the little boy snuck water and got double punished because he was thirsty. And then I heard another therapist say, you don't take, when you are disciplining a child, you don't take away their necessities. You don't take away food. You don't take away water, things they need to survive. That is not, because that's going to play on their self-worth. Like the one son played a prank on his brother and got his bed taken away from him. Like you don't do that. Like even in the foster care system, they make sure people have a bed. You might take away the cell phone for a week, right? Or take away TV privileges for a week. Something that's not going to affect their well-being. But taking away water, especially water,
and
from a
food
child.
and all of that. Yeah.
I would not be shocked if they have a growth development with their bodies because of the amount of malnourishment that these children were put. And that was happening before Jodi came along. There are many videos of Ruby denying her children. Did you see that clip where she made them all share one banana for breakfast?
Yes. Yes. I mean, there's 6 kids they literally have a bite of a banana and that's it.
Yeah. They had to stand in line and come and take a bite of the banana. I mean, I don't know about your house growing up, Shanti, or what you did with your kids, but when I was a kid, we could go to the kitchen anytime we wanted and get whatever snacks we wanted.
Oh, yeah.
My parents never stopped us from getting food, ever. That was never stopped,
My father always said, eat, my child, there's lots of food.
Yeah.
Eat, my child, there's lots of food. That was, I remember him saying that until the day he died. Whenever we were having a meal and we were at his house, whatever, I'd go, eat, my child, there's lots of food. That I remember so well.
I mean, even at my
Never ever.
grandparents' house, we always had a free for all at my grandparents' house. We'd go and get whatever snacks we wanted, you know? I can't imagine being a child and living in a house where you don't feel like you have that freedom to eat. I
Yeah,
can't imagine that.
shocking.
It's shocking.
Absolutely shocking.
When I would go spend the night at my friend's house as a kid, and every friend, we go to the kitchen and get snacks out of their house. You know, it was never an issue. And I can't, like, the fact that these children, I mean, on Saturday mornings, my mother would come in the bedroom and ask us if she would make us cinnamon toast in bed. Like every Saturday morning, we would get cinnamon toast in bed, you know, like that was our kind of our Saturday morning treat, you know, and I just cannot, like, I want to cry for those kids. Like the amount, and you know, do they have eating problems? A lot of people have speculated these kids might struggle with eating disorders as they get older and have a skewed view on food because it was used as a manipulation tactic. I know people I've seen who have been so financially strapped that the adults have gone without eating just to make sure their child has enough food.
Yeah, exactly. You say, as a parent, you sacrifice for your kids all the time.
Yeah.
It's what you do when you're a parent.
Do you think Ruby
You know?
and Kevin Franke were sacrificing their meals?
I think Kevin needs to be also brought to justice somehow for being an accomplice to this nonsense. Because, as I said, there's some video clips that I saw him prancing up and down there when she was only letting one of them. They were all the others had to be outside, and one at a time could come in for breakfast. And the baby had to wait until last. The baby had to wait until last. No, man, it's shocking, honestly. This kind of stuff. I mean, that woman had an issue with food, and the other one has an issue with sex.
Yeah.
So there's definitely stuff around that. And you know, the minute, you know, when we start looking at things like this, we have to. The minute someone suggests or enforces these kind of hard, fast rules on kids, that person has a problem. Get your kids out of there as quickly as what you can.
I'm going to step away. Someone's at my door. Keep talking, Shanti. Sorry, guys. It's a live show. Hold on one second.
No problem. Yeah, so I was just saying that the minute we hear about people having these hard, fast rules for kids on food, anything like that, you run as far as what you can from them, because that is just funny. I was always woken up by my mother with ice water thrown on me. Oh my gosh, Charmaine, that's just terrible.
That is just terrible. Oh my God. I had a friend.
I mean, my brothers and sisters did that to me a few times.
That's sibling pranks, right? Your parents. I had a friend whose mother, and I've thought about this. Her mother, whenever my friend or her siblings woke up grumpy or in a bad mood, the mother would make them go back and get into bed, wait 5 minutes, and wake up again. Because she said, well, they must have gotten up on the wrong side of the bed. And so she'd be like, we're going to start over. Go back and get in your bed. You'd set the timer for 5 minutes, and then they have to get up on the right side. I think that's so funny.
We had that as well.
Yeah.
And I remember saying to my mother, well, what side must I get on? That side or this side?
That side obviously made me pissy. So, you know, it's just, it's, you know, I've laughed about this before. My parents, being Southern, a lot of, when I was a kid, they would go off to these like cocktail parties some nights. And when they would go off to these cocktail parties, my sister and I were allowed to like go to sleep on the sofa with the babysitter to wait, because we wanted them to tuck us in. And one of my best childhood memories, like sense memories, is feeling my mom's being picked up off the sofa and feeling my mom's collarbone in her like fancy clothes and like smelling alcohol on her from being at the cocktail and being carried to bed. And I love when I smell it on people's clothes, because it reminds me of like that feeling of my head being on my mom's shoulder as a little kid. And I think about that a lot. These poor children, I don't think these children were hugged on by their mother. and like picked up and carried to bed by their mother.
Yeah.
I don't think they
Never.
ever were. Right. And so just this normal stuff, like how many kids when you're young, you get afraid of the dark. And so you run and get into bed with your parents. That safety feeling. Do you think the Franke family allowed their kids to do that? Probably not. But how sad is that? Because when you go and get,
Exactly.
mom and dad are going to fix everything. If I just go and get in the bed with mom and dad, I think about, I don't like over-the-counter medicines that much, but one of the over-counter medicines I always have on me is Benadryl. Because Benadryl saved my sister's life when we were little. And I think about this, like if my sister had been born into the Franke family, I think she probably would have passed away by now because my sister had my mom's family is from the coast of South Carolina, the low country. And there are these little bugs that live in the sand. Most of us don't even notice these bugs. We don't even see them. But my sister, when she was really little, was out playing with our cousins in the sand and got bitten by these bugs. We all get bitten by them, but they whelped up on my sister. And so my sister, she was really young and was crying and scratching. And so my mom put my sister in the bed with my mom and my dad so that she could just, and as my sister was crying and my mom was rubbing her back, she noticed my sister's throat was whelping up. And so my mom got up and gave my sister Benadryl immediately, and they took her to the emergency room. And the doctor told my mom that Benadryl basically saved my sister's life because her throat was starting to close up. What they thought was just a little reaction ended up being a lot. And at that point, she got an EpiPen. But I think about that, situations like that, when a kid gets a bug bite and they're that little and they are scratching it. And a mom like Ruby is going to make them sleep on the freaking bathroom floor. They've got a stomach virus. She's not going to cuddle them at night to even feel if there's an emergency situation.
No nurturing.
No nurturing it at all. And I think about that, my mother's instinct with my sister when the rash started to appear, they didn't think it was going to be that big of a deal, but she put her in the bed with my mom and my dad. So my mom could rub her back and comfort her. And that's when she felt that her throat and that's when she realized it was serious and it saved her life. Right. So, I just, these poor children, I just really, really hope that they, especially the younger two, I think the younger two probably have a better chance of really healing because they're so young and they can start the therapy, they can start the healing process because the body will heal. The body will heal. It's the mind that you worry.
The emotions. And let's hope that they have some beautiful people who can, I think this is such a high profile case that maybe the children will get some really good attention. And, but the sad thing is as well, if they lose both their parents, and I say this all the time, no matter what a child's mother does, that child always wants the mother's love and the mother's approval. So let's hope that the mother will see the light whilst she's in prison. Let's hope. And that she can actually be in a position where she apologizes to her children and that she can come out and have a decent relationship with them, no matter when that might be, because every child wants that from their mother. And when that's missing, it leaves a big gap in that person's life when the mother's not there and when there's this kind of stuff that's gone down.
And I hope the oldest daughter, Sherry, the oldest daughter, I hope I'm really proud of her. I don't know her, but she has really stepped up as a 20-year-old. And in a lot of the videos, she was the one nurturing the younger children, which is called parentification. It is another form of abuse, but I think that's a good sign that the oldest child has, even without even the guidance, just intuitively knew that what her mother was doing wasn't right. And so that gives me hope that these kids, the 6 kids, will be able to make a full turnaround from this horrific situation they were born into.
Absolutely. Well, let's say amen to that, because that's for sure. Every child deserves a good start in life. That's for sure. Yeah. Well, everybody, I want to say thank you so much for joining us on this tragic show. And as you can see, for some reason, I'm all bunged up tonight. And yeah. Charmaine, I know it sounds like you didn't have a great time with your mum as well. And I hope that you have found some semblance of peace around that, because my word, you know, I have my mother and I treasure her. I'll tell you that much. She's absolutely super important in my life and always has been. I remember just as a little kid, just adoring my mother. Everything about her was just perfect. She was just perfect.
Do you know, it's interesting when you're talking about Charmaine and like with Ruby, it's even biologically, it's because they say that when the mother carries the baby, she actually carries some of her the baby's brain cells in her head. That's why women have mother's intuition. That's why they are very different from fathers in their relationship with their children. And so it's a wonder that people like your mother and Ruby Frankie, like, you know, it's a shame. And I hope, Charmaine, you know, that's not a reflection on you at all.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely not. Anyway, guys, thank you so much. And I look forward to then seeing you tomorrow with Caleb at 6 p.m. my time. That's the usual time that we have Caleb on. And Brice, will see you on Monday again, and then next week, Wednesday as well. So look forward to having you all back. And I want to say thank you so much for joining. Always such a pleasure to have you guys on in the chat. Really enjoy having you here. So take good care, everybody. God bless you all. And I wish you health, wealth, and all the abundance you can possibly manage. And again, to the Patreons, thank you guys. Really, really, really appreciate you. God bless everybody. See you soon. Jerry, bye.